The video game world in 2019 was actually full of surprises. You don't actually realize how much there was going on until you look back. So we're rounding up 10 or so of the biggest surprise hits of the year 2019. We're looking at it from a few perspectives. The games that were outright surprise releases, games that looked bad but turned out good, and games that came out of nowhere and grew big fan bases, and even ones that just became unexpected mega hits. We got a lot to talk about and cover, so let's get started off with number 10 and talk about Risk of Rain 2. A game that we were blown away by. You know, we had played the first one and liked it here in the office, but something about its sequel just resonated with us way more. They took Risk of Rain and really ran with it here. For one, it's like the perfect co-op game, and its roguelike mechanics pretty much makes it endlessly replayable, and its awesome gameplay alone makes you want to keep coming back for more. Each character controls drastically different, which also does a good job with changing up how much the game plays. It's also super straightforward, which makes it easy to jump in. You know, it might not look like much, but it's fun to dive deep and master it as well. The in-game loot, which comes in the form of mods, changes how you fight, buffing certain abilities, or letting you place turrets, among other things. If you're into third-person shooters, horde mode type games, and if you're a fan of playing co-op games with your friends, this is definitely something you should pick up, because it's definitely one of the best times we've had playing a co-op game in 2019. It reviewed insanely well, and we think it's gonna go down in history as an underrated gem. But moving over to number 9, let's talk about my time at Portia. Yes, that is actually apparently how it is pronounced. We made sure. The elevator pitch for this game, stop me if you've heard this already in another video, it's basically a weirder 3D Stardew Valley with a lot more elements plopped in. There's more crafting, there's building, there's taking care of things like friends and animals, growing crops, and doing activities all in a town. There's a nice emphasis on exploration and stats to build your character in social, combat, and crafting. It's cutesy, but it's engaging. And honestly, it surprised us and many people because it wasn't on our radar at all. At first glance, from the marketing and images and snippets of gameplay, it kind of looked like some weird, cheap knockoff of other games. It's the perfect example, though, of don't judge a book by its cover, because it's actually a satisfying, charming game. And it found a hell of an audience, too. Especially, look at it on Steam. For this game, reviews are labeled overwhelmingly positive, which is something a game really truly has to earn on Steam. So yeah, there it is. But moving on over to number 8, since we're talking about PC Steam games, let's talk about Mordhau. There was some buzz starting to gather around at the launch of this one, and when it did finally come out, it shot to the top of the Steam charts. We were really surprised by how quickly this one caught on. I get why, too, because it's actually a lot of fun to play. Seeing that most of the competitive multiplayer games that we get nowadays are shooters, it was nice to get something that wasn't that. Instead, we got medieval warfare, and it was just as fun as an intense shooter. And people were clearly very hungry for this type of game. Now, the different classes all controlled differently because of the different weapons that they were using, and just charging into the battlefield to have an intense one-on-one duel with an opposing player in the middle of this big, chaotic, explosive battle, it all just never got old. It's a unique game that is very much a uniquely PC game, and it's worth taking a look if you're competitive. But over at number 7, Outward. This was another RPG that came out of nowhere. Excuse me if you've heard me talk about this one before, but we really didn't get around to it in time here at gameranx, but we were hounded with a flood of requests to cover and talk about this game. It was unprecedented. We were totally taken by surprise. It's a challenging, engaging RPG with a different approach to the player death and a good emphasis on managing some survival elements. Also, some solid co-op, and just generally, it became a big game on Steam. The developers have publicly acknowledged it was a success and are very quick to point out, with the team being under 20 people, they made the game without crunching or working a bunch of overtime and overworking themselves. So, nice work, guys. This is a good one. Now, next over at number 6, let's talk about Untitled Goose Game. This one caused a bit of a ruckus when it was first announced, with the concept first surfacing at a game jam where the objective was to let you just be a horrible, terrible goose. Fast forward to September of this year, Untitled Goose Game drops as an official release, and it becomes an instant bestseller, and it's all anyone wants to talk about. Now, the game is fine. It's a fun little low-poly stealth game where you just go around stealing shit and causing trouble, and it's funny to watch, especially when playing with friends around. That's what really made Goose Game a huge deal, the impact it had on the gaming community at large. Almost instantly, Goose Game memes became the hottest things on Twitter and Reddit and all that, and they're still surfacing with hundreds of thousands of retweets pretty regularly. It's wild. Just this week, we saw one where someone replaced their Christmas tree topper with a big goose stealing stealing a star, which is like kind of extreme for a video game goof, but more power to you. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. The game itself became such an overnight sensation that my mom texted me asking what the game with the goose was called. So if that's not a surprise hit, I don't know what is, man. Over at number 5, Remnant From the Ashes is a game that we honestly had no idea was even releasing, but after seeing a lot of you all talking about it in our comment section and Discord and on Twitter, we looked into it, and man, we were excited that we did because we loved it, and it seemed like a lot of other people did. Never knew we needed a Dark Souls-like shooter until we started playing it. This was one that we weren't able to put down until we beat it. The gameplay loop was addicting, jumping into other players' worlds to see how their dynamically generated world was built, seeing what bosses they had in their world that we didn't have in ours, and trying to lock down every weapon the game has to offer was just such a blast. The random dynamically generated worlds here is definitely some of the best parts of the game. We're surprised. Talking to friends who had played it as well and hearing about how their world differed from mine was really interesting. You could tell that that's where they put a lot of their time and effort into. Like I said, this one really came out of nowhere for us, and it's one that I would 100% recommend checking out if it's your type of thing. But down to number 4, A Plague Tale, Innocence. This was a surprise for us in particular here. We freaking loved it. It looked like it could have been an awkward low-budget experience, but it turned out to be a pretty high-quality, fun, and engrossing single-player story-based adventure. You play as a young girl in medieval France trying to escort her brother through a land torn apart by this mysterious and actually horrific, nasty plague. It's got good character moments, some horror elements, and some great music, art direction, and kick-ass visuals, especially when you crank it up on PC. Think of something in the same vein as previous year's Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. A great focus on story and visuals. Not the longest game in the world, but still incredibly satisfying to play through. The publishers have even announced that they are working on a sequel, which is something you never really expect with a smaller, a little more humbler game like this, but we're so happy that this game caught on and was a success. At number 3, Greedfall was a really nice surprise in the third-person Western RPG style, and one that often just doesn't get enough love. Now, it sets you as this neutral party in a world of conflict. There's an empire with settlers coming into a new world, and they've settled a colony, while problems are brewing with the local people who have lived there for centuries. Now, that's just the spark notes. I'm totally glossing over it, but it's like colonial history with a fantasy twist. In this world, there's a mysterious, weird plague, there's magic, and lots of fantastical creatures for you to kill. Now, you drop into this world and explore its various locations that aren't quite open world, and you build out your character in a typical RPG fashion. It's satisfying, and really, Greedfall exists as one of those fun B-tier games. Not super expensive, high-budget AAA, but not really an indie game either. It's got a lot of charm to it. It definitely saw a surprise swell of hype before release thanks to its unique setting, and hot damn, Spiders and Focus Home, the developer and publisher, actually really pulled it off. They don't always have the best track record. I definitely know that for sure after doing before you buys for many of their games. But this has been their best work to date. Focus Home has said that their profits were up 135% year over year, and they attributed much of that directly to Greedfall and it surpassing their expectations. If they make a Greedfall 2 and kind of improve on the shortcomings, they'll have their hands on something even better. I hope they do. Now down to number 2, The Outer Wilds is one that just came out of nowhere and took over the conversation for quite a while, especially for people who like space games. Coming from a relatively unknown independent developer, Mobius Digital, the game is like a roguelike of sorts. You're exploring the ins and outs of various planets in a smaller solar system, looking for relics left by an ancient, advanced precursor alien race, and then every 22 minutes, the sun goes supernova, everything is destroyed, and you're launched back to the start of the time loop, taking with you only your knowledge gained from the runs before. You'll find yourself figuring out the nuances of the game's world, how gravity and physics and general temporal aspects of things change from planet to planet, finding and translating artifacts, and figuring out the proper order to do things to come up with that perfect run to hopefully help you stop the sun from exploding and killing everything over and over again. Assuming you're able to actually make it to the 22-minute reset anyway, and don't destroy your ship or suffer an untimely death in the process. It's surprisingly in-depth and it's cool, and the planet and world design is really cool, with every setting having its own vibe and interesting mechanic that you need to use to delve deeper into the incredibly dense areas that the developers have created. It's just overall a really unique experience, and it launching day and date to all the people who have Xbox Game Pass probably helped it get into the hands of a lot more people who wouldn't have gone out of their way to buy it originally. So if you haven't checked out The Outer Wilds, we can't recommend it enough. But finally, down to number one of the biggest surprises of the year, of course, Apex Legends. It just came out of nowhere. There were rumors that Respawn was working on a battle royale game that was set in the Titanfall universe. Then we quickly got leaked art, and then bam, all of a sudden, Respawn came out and said, nope, hey, it's a hero-based battle royale game, and it's called Apex Legends. It's out right now, go play it. And then, like that, it was an overnight sensation. It topped all the charts, had 2 million concurrent players, and although there was some controversy over some microtransaction stuff, it stayed in the front of people's minds for a long time. And it was popular for good reasons. Like, it was the first game in the battle royale genre to come up with a smart, intuitive communication system that was done with a series of emotes and hotkeys and the like, letting a team kind of coordinate and be effective strategically without everyone chatting on the mic. On top of that, it launched with 8 heroes who were all unique and had very cool skills, and the gunplay and mobility were everything that you really have kind of come to expect from the guys who made Titanfall 2. I mean, like, aside from the actual robots, the Titans themselves, they're not in this, and that kind of sucks. But the game has continued to see support by Respawn, adding things like new heroes and solo game modes, and while it's not quite as popular as it was at its launch boom, I mean, like, that's like a hard thing to keep going, but like, it still has a really passionate and intense player base, which is really cool to see, and honestly, this game is a net positive. We're glad it's out there. It totally took everyone by surprise. But of course, before we finish up, we got some bonus games for you we got to talk about as well. First, we got to mention Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's good. EA didn't ruin it. Respawn did a really great job with it, and it's nice to have a good Star Wars game again. Some people just really didn't expect that. Also, Disco Elysium, the character story-based RPG, just kind of was released, and it's intense, in-depth, and really worth checking out, especially closer to the end of the year like this. And also, Planet Zoo. It turns out that people still really love tycoon-style games, especially with animals, because this one made a pretty big splash as well. But those are some games that we thought were big surprises in 2019. But of course, the magic of this is we'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments. Everybody's been surprised by different things, so you probably got your own list, so let us know. Now, if you enjoyed this video, and maybe we put something on your radar, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing and maybe hitting that notification bell because we put out videos every single day. Either way, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.